What happens when the world's most famous entrepreneur gets a mysterious text from his brother about returning to where it all began? In 1995, two broke brothers slept on an office floor in Palo Alto, surviving on instant noodles and impossible dreams. Today, one of them is worth over $200 billion, having revolutionized electric cars, space travel, and neural interfaces. But success has a way of making you forget who you were when you had nothing to lose. When Elon Musk finds a dusty cardboard box in their mother's garage, he knows his brother needs to see what's inside. The contents will reveal a truth about their journey that neither brother fully understood, and change how Elon sees everything he's built since leaving that tiny office behind. This is the untold story of Zip2, their first company. The story of two young men who risked everything on a crazy idea about helping newspapers survive the internet age. The story of how sleeping on floors and sharing hamburgers taught them that the biggest risk isn't failure. It's forgetting why you started. Some secrets are worth more than billions. Some memories are worth more than empires. And sometimes you have to go back to where you began to understand where you're truly headed. The story begins on a Tuesday evening in Palo Alto, when a simple text message pulls the world's busiest entrepreneur back to the place where impossible dreams first became reality. The Tesla Model S hummed quietly through the familiar streets of Palo Alto. Elon Musk gripped the steering wheel a little too tight as he drove past the coffee shop where he used to steal Wi-Fi. Past the YMCA where he showered when he couldn't afford a real apartment. Past all the places that reminded him of a time when $50 was the difference between eating and not eating. His phone buzzed on the dashboard. A text from Kimball. Found the old office building. Can you meet me here? There's something I need to show you. Elon hadn't been back to 430 Sherman Avenue since 1999. 24 years. The small office space where he and Kimball started Zip2 felt like a different lifetime. Back then, he was just another broke kid with big dreams and bigger debts. Now, at 52, he was worth more money than most countries had in their budgets. The weight of his current life pressed down on him as he turned onto Sherman Avenue. Tesla's stock price had dropped 15% last week. SpaceX was 3 months behind schedule on the Mars mission timeline. Neuralink was facing new safety questions from the FDA. The Boring Company had hit another geological snag in Las Vegas. Every day brought new problems that affected thousands of jobs and billions of dollars. Sometimes he missed when the biggest problem was whether they could afford pizza for dinner. The building looked exactly the same. A plain, two-story structure with beige walls and small windows. Nothing special about it. Nothing that would tell you it was where one of the world's richest men had once slept on the floor, because he couldn't afford a bed. Kimball was waiting outside, leaning against his electric pickup truck. At 50, he still had the same warm smile that had helped them close their first deals. His hair was grayer now, and he wore the comfortable clothes of someone who spent time on farms instead of in boardrooms. But his eyes still held the same optimism that had carried them through their darkest days. "You look good, brother," Kimball said, giving Elon a hug. "Older but good." "Thanks, I think." Elon looked up at the building. "I can't believe it's still here. I thought they would have torn it down by now. The whole neighborhood is changing. But this old place keeps hanging on." Kimball picked up a cardboard box from the ground beside him. "I was cleaning out Mom's garage last weekend. Found this in the back corner covered in dust and spider webs." The box was old and worn. Elon could see his own handwriting on the side in faded black markers. Zip2, important stuff. 1999. He had completely forgotten about it. "What's inside?" Elon asked. Kimball's smile became mysterious. "That's what I want to show you. But first, let's go inside. I got permission from the current tenant. They know who we are." They walked to the front door. A small sign read, "Digital Dreams Marketing, Suite 204. Elon remembered when their sign had said Zip2 Corporation, in letters they'd printed at Kinko's, because they couldn't afford a real sign company. "Do you remember our first day here?" Kimball asked as he pushed the door open. "July 15th, 1995, Elon said without hesitation. "We had $28,000 and no idea what we were doing." "You had no idea what you were doing." "I knew exactly what I was doing. Following my crazy brother into certain failure." They climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor. Each step brought back memories. The time they'd carried a broken computer up these same stairs because they couldn't afford to fix it anywhere else. The night they'd sat on these steps at midnight, sharing a gas station hot dog because it was all the food they had left. The hallway smelled different now. Fresh paint instead of old coffee and desperation. But when they reached the door to their old office, Elon's heart started beating faster. "Ready?" Kimball asked, his hand on the door handle. Elon nodded, though he wasn't sure he was ready for anything anymore. Success had made him careful. When you had everything to lose, every risk felt bigger. Kimball opened the door. The office was smaller than Elon remembered. Much smaller. How had they fit 4 desks in here? How had they ever thought this tiny space could hold their huge dreams? The current tenant had decorated with modern furniture and motivational posters. "Think different and fail fast, learn faster" covered the walls. It looked like every other startup office in Silicon Valley. But Elon could still see it the way it used to be. The corner where he'd set up his computer, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and energy drink cans. The window where Kimball used to stand during phone calls with potential customers, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. The spot on the floor where they both slept when working through the night became working through the week. "I can't believe we lived here," Elon said quietly. "We didn't live here, we survived here." Kimball set the cardboard box on the desk. "There's a difference." Elon walked to the window. Outside, Palo Alto bustled with the energy of Silicon Valley. Tesla cars mixed with Google bikes and Apple buses. Everyone was building the future, just like he and Kimball had tried to do all those years ago. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd failed?" Elon asked. "Every day," Kimball admitted. "But then I remember that failing was never really an option. Not because we were so smart or talented, but because we were too stubborn to quit, and too poor to quit safely." They both laughed. It was easier to laugh about poverty when you were billionaires. Kimball opened the cardboard box slowly, like he was handling something precious. "Mom saved all of this. She said she knew we'd want it someday, even if we didn't know it yet." Inside, Elon could see papers, photographs, and what looked like an old notebook. His notebook, the one where he'd written down every idea, every plan, every late-night thought about what they were trying to build. But Kimball didn't take anything out yet. "Before I show you what's inside," Kimball said, "I need to ask you something. Are you happy?" The question hit Elon like a punch. Happy? He hadn't thought about happiness in years. He thought about progress, about problems to solve, about timelines and deadlines and making sure humanity had a backup planet before Earth became uninhabitable. "I'm fulfilled," Elon said carefully. "I'm doing work that matters." "That's not what I asked." Elon looked around the small office again. At 52, he had everything he dreamed of at 24. Multiple successful companies, more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. The respect of scientists and engineers around the world, his face on magazine covers, and his name in history books. So why did he feel so tired all the time? "I don't know if I'm built for happiness," Elon said finally. "I think I'm built for solving problems. And there are always more problems to solve." Kimball nodded like he'd expected that answer. "That's why I wanted you to see this." He reached into the box and pulled out a single piece of paper. "This is the real reason I asked you to come here." Elon took the paper. It was a letter, written in their mother's familiar handwriting. At the top it said, "For my boys, open only when you've both made it." She wrote this in 1995, Kimball said, "during our worst week when we thought we were going to lose everything. She never told us about it. I found it at the bottom of the box." Elon stared at the letter. His mother's words from 28 years ago, written when they were sleeping on this very floor and wondering if they were completely insane for trying to start a company. "What does it say?" he asked. Kimball smiled. "That's the surprise I wanted to share with you. But first, I think we need to remember how we got here. Really remember, not just the success story everyone knows, but the real story. The story of 2 brothers who had nothing but each other and a crazy idea about helping newspapers not die." Elon looked at his brother, then at the letter, then around the tiny office where it all began. Outside, his Tesla was worth more than this entire building. In his pocket, his phone was buzzing with messages about board meetings and rocket launches and neural implants that could help paralyzed people walk again. But right now, in this small room where he'd once been so hungry he'd shoplifted oranges, all of that felt very far away. "Okay," he said. "Let's remember. July 15, 1995. The same office, different world. The memories hit Elon like a wave as he stood in the middle of the small room. Suddenly, he wasn't 52 anymore. He was 24, skinny from too little food and too much stress, carrying a borrowed computer up these same stairs. "Do you remember what this place looked like when we first walked in?" Kimball asked, setting the mysterious box carefully on the desk. Elon closed his eyes. Empty. Completely empty. Just gray carpet and white walls. And that water stain on the ceiling from the leak upstairs. The stain that looked like Australia. "You said it looked like a pancake." It was definitely Australia. They both smiled. Even their first day here, they'd been brothers first, partners second. Elon could see it all again. July 1995. He had just made the hardest decision of his life, dropping out of Stanford's PhD program in physics after exactly 2 days. 2 days. His professors thought he was insane. His mother thought he was throwing his life away. "Elon, you're giving up Stanford for what?" May Musk had said over the phone, her South African accent thick with worry. "To start a computer business? You don't know anything about business." She was right. He knew about physics and math and code, but business? He'd never sold anything in his life except his old textbooks. But the internet was happening. Right now. Every day he stayed in school was a day someone else might build the thing he could see so clearly in his mind. A way to put newspapers online. A way to help people find local businesses with maps and directions. It seemed so obvious, but hardly anyone was doing it yet. "I have to try, Mom," he had told her. "If I don't try now, I'll always wonder what could have happened." What he didn't tell her was how scared he was. 24 years old, and he was betting everything on an idea that might be completely stupid. Kimball had been working at a bank in Toronto, making good money, wearing nice suits, living a normal life, when Elon called and asked him to quit his job and move to California to start an internet company. Any sane person would have said no. "How much money do we have?" Kimball had asked. $28,000. "Mostly from Dad." "How much do we need?" "I have no idea." There had been a long pause on the phone. Then Kimball laughed. "Well, when you put it that way, how can I say no?" Their father, Errol, had not been enthusiastic about the investment. "You boys are going to lose every penny," he'd said as he wrote the check. "But maybe losing money will teach you something about the real world." Elon pushed that memory away. Even now, 28 years later, his father's doubt still stung. "Remember our first night here?" Kimball asked, bringing Elon back to the present. Sleeping bags on the floor, no furniture, no phone line, just my computer and a lot of hope. "And that pizza we split for dinner, from the place down the street. Tony's Pizza. Extra cheese, no meat, because it was cheaper." They had eaten that pizza sitting on the floor, backs against the wall, looking around their empty office and trying to convince themselves they weren't making a huge mistake. "What did we call ourselves that first week?" Kimball asked. "Global Link Information Network," Elon said with a grimace. "Terrible name." "Your idea." "I know. I was young and stupid. You were young and ambitious. There's a difference." That first week had been brutal. Elon worked 18 hours a day, writing code to create their mapping software. Kimball worked the phones, trying to convince newspaper editors to even talk to them about putting their content online. Most people hung up immediately. "The internet is just a fad," one editor told Kimball. "People will always want real newspapers. Why would anyone want to read news on a computer screen?" In 1995, only 16% of Americans used the internet. Email was still new. Most businesses didn't have websites. The idea that people would one day read all their news online seemed crazy, but Elon could see it coming. Late at night, alone in the office, he would sketch out ideas for features that wouldn't exist for years. Interactive maps, user reviews, mobile access from phones, online ordering and delivery. "You're thinking too far ahead," Kimball would tell him. "We need to solve today's problems first." "But if we only solve today's problems, someone else will solve tomorrow's problems first," Elon would argue back. They were both right. They needed to survive long enough to build the future they could imagine. Survival was harder than either of them expected. The office rent was $800 a month. Food cost about $10 a day if they were careful. Gas for Elon's old BMW cost $50 a week. Internet service was expensive. Phone service was expensive. Everything was expensive when you only had $28,000 to your name. By August, they were down to $15,000. "We need customers," Kimball said one morning, looking at their bank balance. "Real customers. Paying customers. I know, the software isn't ready yet. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to work. If we launch too early and it breaks, we'll never get a second chance with these newspapers. If we don't launch soon, we won't be able to afford to eat." This was their constant argument. Elon wanted to build something amazing. Kimball wanted to build something that would pay the bills. They were both right and they were both wrong. The breakthrough almost didn't happen at all. By September, they were down to $8,000. They hadn't paid themselves salaries in 2 months. Elon was living on instant noodles and oranges. Kimball was making coffee with yesterday's grounds to save money. "Maybe Dad was right," Kimball said one evening as they shared a single hamburger from McDonald's dollar menu. "Don't say that." Elon's voice was sharp. "We're not quitting. I'm not talking about quitting. I'm talking about being realistic. Maybe we should look for jobs and try this again when we have more money saved up. There won't be a try again. The internet is happening now. Every day we wait is a day we fall further behind." Kimball looked at his brother. Even skinny and tired and stressed, Elon had this fire in his eyes that never went out. It was the same look he'd had as a kid when he decided to build a rocket in their backyard in South Africa. It was the same look he'd had when he taught himself computer programming at age 10. "Okay," Kimball said, "but if we're doing this, we're really doing this. No safety net. No backup plan." "No backup plan," Elon agreed. They shook hands in their tiny office, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and the smell of determination. Two brothers betting everything on an idea most people thought was stupid. Outside, the sun was setting over Palo Alto. In a few years, this would be the heart of the biggest technology boom in human history. Fortunes would be made and lost on ideas just like theirs. But that night, all they had was each other and the absolute certainty that giving up was not an option. "Tomorrow we start calling newspapers again," Kimball said. "Tomorrow I fix the mapping bug that's been driving me crazy for 2 weeks," Elon replied. "Deal." They locked up the office and walked to the YMCA for their nightly showers. Just two young men with impossible dreams and the stubborn refusal to let reality get in the way. Neither of them knew that in 3 weeks, everything would change forever. November 30th, 1995. 3 weeks later, the knock on the office door came at the worst possible time. Elon was hunched over his computer, his eyes red from staring at code for 14 straight hours. Empty coffee cups covered his desk like a caffeine graveyard. He hadn't eaten anything except a stale donut since yesterday morning. "We're closed," he shouted without looking up. The knocking continued. "I said we're closed." Elon yelled louder, his voice cracking from exhaustion. "Actually, your door says you're open until 6, came a voice from the hallway. "And it's only 4:30. Kimball looked up from the corner where he was stuffing envelopes with their company brochures. They had printed 500 copies at Kinko's, spending money they couldn't afford to lose. So far, they had mailed 400 and received exactly 0 responses. "Should I get it?" Kimball whispered. Elon rubbed his face with both hands. They looked terrible. He was wearing the same clothes he'd worn for 3 days. Kimball's hair was sticking up in every direction. Their office smelled like old pizza and desperation. "Fine," Elon muttered. "But if it's another landlord asking about rent money, I'm hiding under the desk." Kimball opened the door. A man in his 50s stood in the hallway, wearing an expensive suit and looking very confused. He had gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He kept checking a piece of paper in his hand against the numbers on their door. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man said. "I'm looking for Digital Solutions, Inc. They're supposed to be in suite." "That's next door," Kimball said, pointing down the hall. "But I think they moved out last month." The man sighed. "Of course they did. I drove all the way from San Jose for this meeting." He looked at the sign on their door. Zip2 Corporation. "What do you boys do?" Elon and Kimball exchanged glances. They had changed their name from Global Link Information Network 2 weeks ago when they realized how stupid it sounded. "We help newspapers put their content online," Kimball said carefully. with maps and business directories. The man's eyebrows went up. Maps? On computers? Yes, sir. Interactive maps. People can find local businesses, get directions, see what's nearby. The man stepped into their office, looking around at the chaos. I'm Greg Coury. I own 3 restaurants in San Jose. I've been trying to figure out how to get more customers to find my places. Elon's head snapped up from his computer. A real potential customer was standing in their office. This never happened. What kind of restaurants? Elon asked, suddenly very awake. Italian. Family recipes. Good food. But we're on side streets. Hard to find unless you already know we're there. This was exactly the problem Zip2 was supposed to solve. Elon felt his heart start beating faster. Show me, Greg said, walking over to Elon's computer. How does this map thing work? Elon's mouth went dry. Their software barely worked. Half the features crashed when you clicked on them. The maps showed businesses in the wrong locations. Just yesterday, their system had placed a McDonald's in the middle of San Francisco Bay. It's still in development, Elon said slowly. I don't care if it's perfect, Greg said. I just want to see how it works. Elon looked at Kimball, who nodded encouragingly. With shaking hands, Elon opened their mapping program. Miraculously, it didn't crash immediately. Okay, Elon said, his voice getting stronger. You type in what you're looking for. Let's say Italian food in San Jose. He typed in the search terms. The program thought for a few seconds, then displayed a map with several red dots scattered across it. Each dot is a restaurant, Elon explained. You click on one and it shows you the address, phone number, and directions. Greg leaned closer to the screen. This is incredible. How do you get all this information? We collect it from phone books, newspapers, business licenses, Kimball said. Then we verify each listing by calling the businesses directly. That part was true. Kimball spent hours every day on the phone, checking addresses and updating their database. It was boring work, but somebody had to do it. What about directions? Greg asked. Click on any restaurant, Elon said, praying the system wouldn't crash. Greg clicked on a dot. A small window opened with the restaurant's information and a Get Directions button. Now type in your starting address, Elon said. Greg typed in his home address. The system calculated the road and displayed turn-by-turn directions on the screen. Greg stared at the monitor in amazement. This is like having a personal guide who knows every street in the city. Exactly, Elon said, his excitement building. And it works for any business. Grocery stores, gas stations, doctor's offices, anything. How much does this cost? Elon and Kimball looked at each other again. They had never actually sold their service to anyone. They had no idea what to charge. For newspapers, we charge based on how many businesses they want listed, Kimball said, making it up as he went along. For individual businesses like your restaurants, we could create custom listings. I'm interested, Greg said, but I have one question. How do I know people will actually use this? Most folks still use phone books and ask for directions at gas stations. It was a fair question. In 1995, the internet still felt like science fiction to most people. Mr. Coury, Elon said, leaning forward in his chair. 5 years from now, everyone will have a computer. 10 years from now, they'll carry computers in their pockets. When that happens, this is how they'll find your restaurants. You really believe that? I know it. The question is, do you want to be ready when it happens? Or do you want to watch your competitors get there first? Greg was quiet for a long moment, staring at the map on the screen. Finally, he smiled. You know what? I've been in business for 20 years, and the best decisions I ever made were the ones that scared me a little bit. He pulled out his wallet and took out a business card. Call me next week. Let's talk about getting all 3 of my restaurants on this system. After Greg left, Elon and Kimball sat in stunned silence. Did that really just happen? Kimball asked. I think so. But I might be hallucinating from caffeine poisoning. He actually wanted to pay us money. Real money. We don't even know what to charge him. We'll figure it out. They were both grinning like idiots. For 3 months, they had been trying to convince newspaper editors to tote them seriously. And their first real customer had literally walked through the wrong door. You know what this means? Elon said. What? We can buy real food tonight. Maybe even meat. Let's not get crazy, Kimball laughed. But definitely something better than ramen noodles. That evening, they walked to the grocery store and bought ingredients for actual meals. Bread, peanut butter, bananas, milks, cereal. It felt like Christmas morning. Greg was right about one thing, Kimball said as they walked back to the office with their groceries. Most people aren't ready for this yet. But some people are, Elon replied. And every day, more people get ready. We just have to survive long enough for the world to catch up to what we're building. Think we can do it? Elon looked up at the darkening sky above Palo Alto. Somewhere out there were millions of people who didn't even know they needed what Zip2 could provide. But they would. Soon. Yeah, he said. I think we can do it. Neither brother knew that Greg Curry's accidental visit would lead to their first newspaper contract, their first real investment, and eventually to a sale that would make them both millionaires. All they knew was that for the first time since starting Zip2, they felt like real entrepreneurs instead of just broke kids with a crazy dream. The breakthrough had begun. November 15, 1995, 2 weeks after Greg's visit, Rich Sorkin looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. The editor of the San Jose Mercury News sat across from Elon and Kimball in their tiny office, checking his watch every 30 seconds. His expensive suit looked out of place, surrounded by their cardboard furniture and tangled computer cables. "I'm only here because Greg Curry wouldn't stop calling me," Rich said, his voice flat with skepticism. "He says you boys have some kind of miracle solution for newspapers. So show me." Elon's hands were shaking as he turned on his computer. This was it, their first meeting with a real newspaper editor. The Mercury News was one of the most important papers in Silicon Valley. If they could land this contract, other newspapers might follow. If they failed, word would spread fast that Zip2 was just another startup with big promises and no delivery. "The newspaper industry is dying," Kimball began, trying to sound confident. "Circulation is down. Advertising revenue is dropping. People are getting their news from TV instead of print." "Tell me something I don't know," Rich muttered. "But what if there was a way to bring your readers back?" Elon said, his voice getting stronger. "What if you could offer them something TV can't?" "Like what?" "Local business information. Interactive maps. The ability to find exactly what they need, when they need it." Rich leaned back in his chair. "My readers can already find local businesses. It's called the Yellow Pages. But the Yellow Pages don't show you where businesses are located," Kimball said. "They don't give you directions. They don't tell you what's nearby. And they're not updated in real time," Elon added. "When a business moves or closes, the Yellow Pages are wrong until the next edition comes out." Rich looked around their messy office. Empty pizza boxes were stacked in the corner. Elon's sleeping bag was still rolled out on the floor from the night before. Their one telephone was held together with electrical tape. "You expect me to trust my newspaper's reputation to this?" Rich asked. Elon felt his face turn red. They looked like amateurs because they were amateurs. But their software worked. At least, it worked most of the time. "Look," Elon said, turning his computer screen toward Rich. "Let me show you what we can do." He typed San Jose Mercury News into their system. A map appeared showing the newspaper's building, along with dozens of other businesses in the surrounding area. "Every business you see here advertises in newspapers," Elon explained. "Restaurants, shops, services, your advertisers. So what if your readers could find these businesses easier? What if they could see exactly where that new restaurant is located, or get turn-by-turn directions to that car dealership?" "You think people want to read newspapers on computer screens?" "Not now," Kimball admitted, "but soon. And when they do, you want to be ready." Rich stared at the map for a long moment. "How many businesses do you have in your database?" "For San Jose? About 3,000 so far," Elon said. "How do you know the information is accurate?" "We verify every listing by phone. Every address, every phone number, every business name." That wasn't entirely true. They had verified maybe half the listings. The other half they were still working on. But Elon figured that was close enough to every listing. "What would this cost me?" Rich asked. Elon and Kimball exchanged quick glances. They had spent hours trying to figure out what to charge. Too much, and newspapers wouldn't be able to afford them. Too little, and they wouldn't make enough money to survive. For the full San Jose area, Kimball said carefully, $3,000. Rich laughed. $3,000? That's what I spend on coffee for my newsroom in 2 months. Elon's heart sank. They had priced themselves too low. But, Rich continued, what happens when your system breaks? What happens when the directions are wrong? What happens when businesses complain that customers can't find them? Then we fix it. Elon said simply. Whatever breaks, we fix. Whatever's wrong, we make it right. Even if it means working all night? Especially if it means working all night. Rich was quiet for a moment, studying both brothers. Finally, he spoke. I'll make you a deal. 50 businesses. A trial run. If it works, we'll talk about the full package. 50 businesses for $3,000? Kimball asked. 50 businesses for free, Rich said. If your system works, if our readers use it, if we don't get complaints, then we'll pay you $3,000 for the full database. Elon felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Free? They needed money now, not maybe later. But Kimball was already nodding. Deal. After Rich left, Elon turned to his brother. Free? We can't afford to work for free. We can't afford not to, Kimball replied. This is our chance to prove the system works. If the Mercury News uses our service, every other newspaper in California will want to know about it. And if it fails, then we'll be broke, but at least we'll know we tried. The next 3 days were pure hell. Elon worked around the clock, testing every feature, checking every map, verifying every address. The pressure was enormous. One software crash, one wrong address, one angry customer. And their deal with the Mercury News would be dead. On the second day, disaster struck. Elon, Kimball shouted from across the office. We have a problem. Elon looked up from his computer, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. What now? I just called Tony's Pizza to verify their address. They closed 6 months ago. Elon's blood went cold. Tony's Pizza was one of the 50 businesses they had promised to deliver to the Mercury News. If the listing was wrong, Rich would think their entire system was unreliable. How many other businesses in our database are closed? Elon asked. I don't know. I'm calling to check them all, but it's gonna take hours. We don't have hours. The Mercury News is publishing our listings tomorrow morning. For the next 18 hours, they called every single business in their database. 12 were closed, 4 had moved, 7 had changed their phone numbers. Their carefully built system was full of holes. We're dead, Kimball said at 2 in the morning, slumped over his desk. Rich is going to destroy us. No, Elon said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. We're going to fix this. He spent the entire night updating addresses, correcting phone numbers and removing closed businesses from their system. By 6 in the morning, he had personally verified all 50 listings. At 9 a.m., the Mercury News published their first online business directory, powered by Zip2's technology. Elon and Kimball sat in their office, staring at their phone, waiting for it to ring with complaints. At 10:30, it finally rang. Zip2 Corporation. Kimball answered nervously. This is Janet from Tony's Deli on First Street, came a woman's voice. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for what? I've had more customers this morning than I usually get all week. People are actually finding my restaurant. Whatever you boys are doing, keep doing it. By noon, they had received 6 more calls. All positive. All from business owners who couldn't believe how many new customers were finding them through the Mercury News website. At 2 p.m., Rich Sorkin called. Well, he said without introduction, you boys didn't screw it up. Does that mean we get the full contract? Elon asked, barely able to contain his excitement. It means you get a chance to earn the full contract. I want you to expand to 500 businesses. Same deal. If it works, you get paid. After Rich hung up, Elon and Kimball sat in stunned silence. 500 businesses, Kimball said finally. 500 businesses, Elon repeated. That's gonna take forever to verify. Then we better get started. They worked 16-hour days for the next 2 weeks. Calling businesses, updating addresses, testing software, fixing bugs. Their fingers were numb from dialing phone numbers. Their eyes hurt from staring at computer screens. But slowly, systematically, they built the most accurate business directory anyone had ever seen. On December 1, 1995, the San Jose Mercury News launched the full Zip2 business directory. 500 local businesses complete with maps and directions. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Business owners called to thank them. Readers called the newspaper asking how to find more businesses on the website. Other newspapers called Rich, wanting to know how the Mercury News had gotten so far ahead in online content. 3 days later, Rich Sorkin called with the words Elon and Kimball had been dreaming of hearing. "Congratulations, boys. You've got yourself a real customer." March 1996. 4 months after their first success, the phone rang at 6 in the morning, jolting Elon awake from his sleeping bag on the office floor. He had been dreaming about code, which wasn't unusual anymore. Most nights he dreamed in programming languages. "Zip2 Corporation," he mumbled into the receiver, his voice thick with sleep. "This is John Martinez from Knight Ridder Newspapers," came a crisp voice. "We need to talk." Elon sat up quickly. Knight Ridder owned 32 newspapers across the country. If they wanted Zip2's services, it would be their biggest deal yet. "Yes, sir. What can we do for you?" "We've been watching what you did with the Mercury News. Very impressive. We'd like to discuss bringing your system to our Chicago and Philadelphia papers." Elon's heart started racing. "That would be amazing. When would you like to meet?" "I'm flying to San Francisco tomorrow. Can you be in my hotel at 2 p.m.? "Absolutely." After hanging up, Elon shook Kimball awake. "Get up. We just got our biggest opportunity yet." The Mercury News' success had changed everything. Suddenly, newspapers that wouldn't return their calls were calling them. The New York Times wanted a meeting. The Los Angeles Times was interested. Hearst Corporation had asked for a demonstration. But success brought new problems Elon hadn't expected. Their tiny office was getting crowded. After the Mercury News deal, they had hired their first employee, a partner named Dave, who worked for pizza and the promise of company stock. Then came Sarah, who handled customer service from a desk made of stacked cardboard boxes. Now they had 4 people working in a space barely big enough for 2. "We need a bigger office," Kimball said for the 10th time that week as he squeezed past Dave's computer setup. "Bigger offices cost more money," Elon replied, not looking up from his screen. "Money we need for servers and software development. We can't grow the business if we can't fit more people in here. We can't grow the business if our technology doesn't work." This was their new constant argument. Kimball wanted to spend money on things that looked professional. Better office space, real furniture, business cards that weren't printed at Kinko's. Elon wanted to spend every dollar on making their software better. Both approaches made sense. Neither was completely right. The meeting with John Martinez went better than expected. He offered them a 6-month contract to create business directories for Chicago and Philadelphia. The pay was $50,000, more money than they had ever seen. But there was a catch. "We need the Chicago system online in 6 weeks, John said over lunch at an expensive restaurant that made Elon nervous. "Our competitor is launching something similar and we need to beat them to market." 6 weeks. Elon's mind raced through everything that would need to happen. They would need to collect data on thousands of Chicago businesses, verify addresses and phone numbers, test the mapping software in a completely different city, debug problems they hadn't discovered yet. "That's a very tight timeline," Kimball said carefully. "It's the only timeline," John replied. "Can you do it or not?" Elon looked at his brother. They needed this contract. But 6 weeks felt impossible. "Yes," Elon said. "We can do it." After John left, Kimball turned to his brother. "Please tell me you have a plan." "I have the beginning of a plan. We'll figure out the rest as we go." The next 6 weeks were brutal. Elon barely slept. He worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination. The rest of the team wasn't much better. Dave fell asleep at his computer so often that Sarah started keeping a pillow at his desk. The problem started immediately. Chicago's street layout was completely different from San Jose's. Their mapping software, designed for California's grid system, couldn't handle Chicago's diagonal streets and complex intersections. Businesses that should have been on State Street were showing up in Lake Michigan. "The whole system is broken," Dave said during their 3rd week of development. "We need to rewrite the mapping engine from scratch." "We don't have time to rewrite anything," Elon replied, his eyes red from staring at code. "We fix what we have." "Elon, you can't fix fundamental problems with quick patches. The software needs a proper foundation. The software needs to work in 3 weeks. That's what it needs." Dave quit the next day. He left a note saying he respected what they were trying to do, but he couldn't work for someone who wouldn't listen to technical advice. Elon was devastated. Dave had been their first real employee, and losing him felt like a personal failure. But there was no time to find a replacement. He would have to finish the Chicago system himself. 2 weeks before the deadline, Kimball found Elon asleep at his computer, his face pressed against the keyboard. He had been working for 36 hours straight. "This is insane," Kimball said, gently shaking his brother awake. "You're going to kill yourself." "I'm fine," Elon mumbled, not opening his eyes. "When was the last time you ate a real meal?" "I had a sandwich yesterday." "Or maybe the day before." "Elon, look at me." Elon finally opened his eyes. His brother looked terrible, pale, skinny, exhausted, but his eyes still held that stubborn fire that never seemed to go out. "We can ask John for more time," Kimball said. "Explain that the project is more complex than we originally thought." "No. If we miss this deadline, we lose all credibility with Knight Ridder. And if we lose Knight Ridder, we lose our chance with the other big newspapers. What if the system doesn't work when we launch it? Then we fix it after we launch it. While it's running. However, we have to." Kimball stared at his brother. Most people would think Elon was being reckless. But Kimball understood something most people didn't. This wasn't about money or success. This was about proving that their vision of the future was possible. 1 week before the deadline, disaster struck. Elon was testing the mapping system when his computer screen went blue. The dreaded blue screen of death that every programmer feared. Hours of work, gone in an instant. He tried to restart the system. Nothing. The hard drive had crashed, taking 3 weeks of coding with it. "Please tell me you have backups," Sarah said, looking over his shoulder. Elon's face went white. In his exhaustion, he had forgotten to back up his work for the past 4 days. 4 days of 18-hour coding sessions, lost forever. He put his head in his hands, and for the first time since starting Zip2, considered giving up. "We're finished," he said quietly. Kimball knelt down beside his brother's chair. "Remember what Mom used to say when we were kids in South Africa? The only way out is through. This is different. We don't have time to rebuild everything. Then we don't rebuild everything. We rebuild what we absolutely need to make it work." That night, both brothers worked side by side, rewriting code from memory. Sarah stayed late to help, even though she didn't know programming. She brought them food, made coffee, and kept track of which features they had rebuilt. By sunrise, they had recovered about 60% of the lost work. It wasn't perfect, but it might be enough. On launch day, Elon's hands shook as he uploaded the Chicago business directory to Knight Ridder's servers. The system had passed basic tests, but they hadn't had time for extensive debugging. At noon, the Chicago Tribune's website went live with Zip2's business directory. Elon, Kimball, and Sarah sat in their office, staring at the phone, waiting for complaints. The first call came at 12:30. "This is Janet Morrison from Knight Ridder's Chicago office," came a woman's voice. "I wanted to let you know, we're getting incredible response to the new business directory." Elon felt like he might faint with relief. "No problems with the mapping system?" he asked. "Well, there are a few businesses showing up in strange places. But overall, it's working great. Much better than what our competitors have." After Janet hung up, the three of them sat in stunned silence. "We actually did it," Sarah said. "We actually did it," Kimball agreed. Elon leaned back in his chair, exhausted but proud. They had survived their first real crisis. The system wasn't perfect, but it worked. And sometimes, working was enough. The phone rang again. This time, it was a business owner in Chicago calling to thank them for helping customers find his store. Then another call, and another. By the end of the day, they knew they had succeeded again. But Elon also knew something else. They couldn't keep growing like this. Working 18-hour days, sleeping in the office, surviving on luck and determination. If Zip2 was going to become a real company, they needed to start acting like professionals instead of desperate kids with a crazy dream. The question was, were they ready to grow up? September 1997. 18 months later, the man in the expensive suit looked completely out of place in their cramped office. Mike Markula Jr. had helped build Apple Computer into a billion-dollar company. Now he was sitting on their cardboard box table, trying not to wrinkle his jacket. "Gentlemen," Mike said, opening his leather briefcase. More Davidow Ventures would like to invest $3 million in Zip2. Elon nearly choked on his coffee. $3 million was more money than he had ever imagined having. With that kind of investment, they could hire real programmers, rent a proper office, buy actual furniture. What's the catch? Kimball asked. Always the practical one. Mike smiled. Smart question. We want 20% of the company. And we want to bring in experienced management to help you scale the business. What kind of experienced management? Elon asked carefully. A CEO, someone who's built and run successful technology companies before. The words hit Elon like a punch to the stomach. I'm the CEO. You're the founder, Mike corrected gently. But running a growing company requires different skills than starting one. You boys have done incredible work getting to this point. Now it's time to let professionals take you to the next level. By September 1997, Zip2 was generating over $1 million in revenue. They had contracts with 16 newspapers across the country. Their staff had grown to 12 people working in a larger office space, though it still felt cramped most days. But growth had brought new challenges Elon wasn't sure how to handle. 2 weeks earlier, their biggest client had threatened to cancel their contract because a software update had crashed their system for 6 hours. Elon had spent the entire night fixing the problem, but the damage to their reputation was already done. Last month, they had lost a potential contract with USA Today because Elon had shown up to the meeting wearing jeans and a t-shirt that said Mars or Bust. The executives couldn't take him seriously as a business leader. And just yesterday, their head of sales had quit, saying she couldn't work for a company where the CEO rewrote code that was already working just because he thought it could be better. Maybe Mike has a point, Kimball said quietly after the investor had left. We're trying to run $1 million business like we're still 2 kids in a garage. Elon felt betrayed. This is our company. We built every line of code. We found every customer. We survived when everyone said we'd fail. And now we need help to keep succeeding. I don't need help. I need better employees who understand the vision. Elon, when was the last time you slept more than 4 hours in a night? Sleep is for people who aren't trying to change the world. You can't change the world if you're too tired to think straight. They were standing in their office after hours, surrounded by computers and empty pizza boxes and the organized chaos that had become their normal working environment. Through the window, they could see other office buildings filled with people who worked normal jobs and went home to normal lives. Elon had never wanted a normal life. But lately, he wondered if wanting an extraordinary life meant he had to sacrifice everything else. I'm scared, Elon admitted finally. Of what? Of losing control. Of watching strangers make decisions about something we built with our own hands. Kimball understood. They had risked everything for this company. They had slept on floors and lived on ramen noodles and worked 100-hour weeks. The idea of handing control to people who hadn't made those sacrifices felt wrong. But Kimball also understood something else. Remember what Mom always said? Sometimes you have to let go to move forward. Mom never ran a technology company. No, but she raised 3 kids mostly by herself, while building her own career. She knows something about taking help when you need it. The brothers didn't speak for 3 days. Elon threw himself into coding, working 18-hour days and sleeping in the office. Kimball handled meetings with potential investors and tried to keep the business running smoothly. Their employees noticed the tension. Sarah asked Kimball if the company was falling apart. 2 programmers started updating their resumes, worried about job security. The crisis came to a head on a Thursday evening. Elon was debugging a mapping algorithm that had been working fine for months. He had decided it wasn't efficient enough and was rewriting it from scratch. What are you doing? Dave asked. They had rehired him 6 months earlier when business picked up, making this code better. That code works perfectly. We have 16 newspapers depending on it. Why are you changing something that isn't broken? Because it's not as good as it could be. Elon, we have 3 new client presentations next week. We have a server upgrade scheduled for Monday. We have actual problems that need solving. Why are you creating new problems? Because perfect is better than good enough. Dave stared at him. You know what? You're right. Perfect is better than good enough. But perfect that never ships isn't better than good enough that works. He walked out of the office. The next morning, his resignation letter was on Kimball's desk. That afternoon, their mother called. Kimball told me you boys are having some difficulties, May said in her direct way. What's going on? Investors want to replace me as CEO, Elon said. My own brother thinks it's a good idea. Do you think it's a good idea? No. This is my company. Sweetheart. Ownership and leadership aren't the same thing. You can own something without being the person who runs it day to day. But if I'm not running it, how do I know it will be done right? You don't. That's what trust means. That evening, May flew to California. She didn't call ahead or ask permission. She just showed up at their office carrying Chinese takeout in the kind of stern expression that had straightened them out as children. Sit, she commanded, setting the food on the conference table they had finally bought instead of using cardboard boxes. Both brothers sat. I didn't raise you to give up on each other, she said quietly. You're brothers first, business partners second. What matters more, who gets the title, or whether this company succeeds. Elon looked at Kimball, really looked at him. For the first time in weeks, his brother looked tired and worried and frustrated. But he also looked loyal. After 2 years of 18-hour days and constant stress, Kimball was still there. I'm sorry, Elon said. I've been acting like an idiot. We both have, Kimball replied. But Mom's right. The company is more important than our egos. So what do we do about the investors? May smiled. You make the decision that's best for the business. And then you trust each other to make it work. 2 weeks later, they accepted more Davidow's investment. Rich Sorkin, their first client from the Mercury News, agreed to become CEO. Elon would remain as chief technology officer, focusing on what he did best, building amazing software. It wasn't the outcome Elon had wanted. But as he watched Rich handle a customer crisis with calm professionalism while he worked on improving their mapping algorithms, he realized something important. Sometimes the best leaders were the ones who knew when to step back and let other people lead. The hardest part of growing up wasn't learning new skills. It was learning which battles were worth fighting and which ones you needed to let someone else win. January 1998. 4 months after Rich became CEO, Elon stared at his computer screen, watching lines of code scroll past. The mapping algorithm he'd been working on for 3 weeks was finally running perfectly. Every calculation was precise. Every route was optimized. It was the best work he'd ever done. But when he tried to upload it to the main system, he got an error message. Access denied, contact system administrator. Sarah, he called across the office. My login isn't working. Sarah looked up from her desk, which was now made of actual wood instead of cardboard boxes. Oh, Rich changed the system access rules. You need approval from the development team before updating core software. Elon felt his jaw clench. I wrote that core software. I know. But Rich said we need better version control. Too many updates were causing problems for clients. Rich Sorkin walked into the office at that moment, carrying coffee in a real mug instead of a paper cup. Everything about their company looked more professional now. Real furniture, proper phone system. Even business cards that didn't look like they were printed at a gas station. Morning, Elon, Rich said cheerfully. How's the mapping project coming along? It's done. But apparently I need permission to install my own code. Not permission, just coordination. We have 40 newspapers using our system now. One bad update could crash everything. Elon understood the logic. But it still felt wrong. For 2.5 years, he had been able to fix problems and add features whenever he wanted. Now he had to ask permission to improve his own software. The investors are happy, Kimball said later that day as they ate lunch in the break room. Revenue is up 60% since Rich took over. Because he's selling features I haven't finished building yet, Elon replied. The features will get built. We have 5 programmers now instead of just you. 5 programmers who don't understand the system like I do. Then teach them. It wasn't that simple. The other programmers were good, but they thought differently than Elon did. They built features that worked well enough. Elon wanted to build features that worked perfectly. During team meetings, Rich would present development timelines that seemed reasonable to everyone except Elon. The mobile interface should be ready in 2 months, Rich announced during their weekly planning session. 2 months? Elon said. That's not enough time to do it right. Mobile devices have completely different requirements than desktop computers. What would you need to do it right? Rich asked patiently. 6 months? Maybe 8? We need to research how people will actually use mapping software on small screens. We need to optimize for limited bandwidth. We need to think about battery life." The other programmers exchanged glances. Mobile phones in 1998 were mostly for making calls. Only a few expensive devices could access the internet. And they were slow and clunky. "Elon," Rich said gently, "we need to build for today's technology, not tomorrow's. Our clients want mobile access now, even if it's basic. But in 5 years, everyone will have internet access in their pocket. Shouldn't we build something that will still work then? In 5 years, we'll build version 2. Right now, we need version 1. This was their constant disagreement. Rich focused on delivering products that work today and made money today. Elon wanted to build products that would still be revolutionary in 10 years. Both approaches made sense. Neither felt completely right to Elon. The company was succeeding by every measure that mattered to investors. They had contracts with over 160 newspapers. Staff had grown to 40 people. They were profitable. Industry magazines wrote articles about their innovative approach to online business directories. But Elon felt like he was watching someone else run his company. His ideas for expanding beyond newspapers, into general mapping services, into mobile devices, into what would eventually become GPS navigation, were politely dismissed as outside our core business. "You think too big, Elon," Rich told him during a strategy meeting. "We have a good business helping newspapers. Let's perfect that before we try to change the world." After the meeting, Elon walked alone to the coffee shop where he used to steal Wi-Fi when they couldn't afford internet service. He ordered an expensive latte, something he could afford now, but still felt guilty buying. His notebook was full of ideas that would never become real products at Zip2. Electric cars that could compete with gasoline vehicles. Commercial space rockets that could make space travel affordable. High-speed transportation systems that could move people between cities in minutes instead of hours. These ideas seemed impossible to everyone else. To Elon, they seemed obvious. If you could build better technology, why wouldn't you? "Are you happy?" Kimball asked that evening as they were leaving the office. It was the same question he had asked months earlier, but now it felt more complicated. "I'm grateful," Elon said carefully. "The company is successful. We're making good money. Our employees have job security." "That's not what I asked." Elon looked back at their office building. Through the windows, he could see programmers working late, building features for tomorrow's newspaper clients. Important work, profitable work, just not the work he dreamed about doing. "I think I'm built differently than most people," Elon said finally. "Most people want to solve problems that exist today. I want to solve problems that will exist tomorrow." "And that makes you unhappy?" "It makes me restless. Like I'm living in the wrong decade." Kimball understood. His brother had always been that way, even as a kid. While other children played with toys that existed, Elon built toys that should exist. While other teenagers talked about cars, Elon read about rocket engines. "What if Rich is right?" Kimball asked. "What if focusing on today's problems is the smart business strategy? That I'm probably not cut out to be a smart businessman. Or maybe you're cut out for a different kind of business. Something that doesn't exist yet." That night, Elon stayed late at the office. Not to work on Zip2 projects, but to sketch out ideas in his notebook. Electric vehicle designs that could travel 300 miles on a single charge. Rocket designs that could land themselves and be reused. Neural implants that could help paralyzed people control computers with their thoughts. To anyone else, these ideas would seem like science fiction. To Elon, they seemed like engineering problems waiting to be solved. He was good at his job as CTO of Zip2. The mapping software ran smoothly. The development team respected his technical knowledge. Clients were happy with the products he helped build. But every day he felt more certain that his real work was waiting for him somewhere else. The question was, would he have the courage to leave behind everything he had helped create to chase ideas that might be impossible? Rich found him at his computer at midnight, surrounded by sketches of rocket engines and electric motors. "Working late again?" Rich asked. "Just thinking about the future. Our future is looking pretty bright. The board is talking about going public in a couple of years. That could make us all very wealthy." Elon nodded. Wealth was good. Financial security was important. But money had never been the point. "Rich," he said carefully. "What if someone offered to buy Zip2? Hypothetically. For how much? Enough money to start whatever company you wanted next." Rich laughed. I'd probably take it. I'm 52 years old. I've built enough companies for one lifetime. And then what would you do? Buy a boat, travel with my wife, play golf, enjoy retirement. Elon tried to imagine himself playing golf in 20 years. The image wouldn't form in his mind. He could only picture himself in workshops and laboratories, building things that had never been built before. What about you? Rich asked. What would you do with that kind of money? Elon looked at his sketches. Electric cars, space rockets, neural interfaces. Ideas that seemed crazy, but felt absolutely necessary. I'd try to get humanity to Mars, he said simply. Rich stared at him for a moment, then shook his head with a smile. You know what, Elon? I think you actually would. As Rich left for the night, Elon turned back to his notebook. Somewhere out there was a future where cars didn't pollute the air, where humans lived on multiple planets, where paralyzed people could walk again through technology. That future wouldn't build itself. Someone had to risk everything to make it happen. The only question was he ready to be that someone? February 12, 1999. The phone call that changed everything. Elon was debugging server code when Rich burst into his office, his face flushed with excitement. We need to talk, both of you, now. Kimball looked up from his desk where he was reviewing marketing materials. Something in Rich's voice made them both stop what they were doing immediately. What's going on? Elon asked. Compaq, Computer Corporation just called. They want to buy Zip2. The words hung in the air like smoke. Elon felt his heart skip a beat. After 4 years of 18-hour days sleeping on office floors and living on instant noodles, someone wanted to buy their company. For how much? Kimball asked, his voice barely above a whisper. $307 million. The number was so large, it didn't seem real. Elon tried to do the math in his head. His share would be about $22 million. Kimball would get $15 million. More money than either of them had ever dreamed of having. When do they want an answer? Elon asked. They're flying a team here tomorrow. If we agree in principle, they want to close the deal within 30 days. That night, Elon couldn't sleep. He walked through downtown Palo Alto, past the coffee shop where he used to steal Wi-Fi, past the YMCA where he used to shower, past all the places that reminded him of when $50 was the difference between eating and starving. Now someone was offering him $22 million. The next morning, the Compaq executives arrived in expensive suits and confident smiles. They had done their homework. They knew Zip2's revenue numbers, client list, and growth projections better than some of their own employees did. Online business directories are the future of local commerce, said Janet Morrison, Compaq's head of acquisitions. We want Zip2 to be part of Compaq's internet strategy. What happens to our employees? Kimball asked. Everyone keeps their job. Same salaries, same benefits. We're buying a successful business, not dismantling it. What about future development? Elon asked. We have plans for mobile applications, GPS integration, expanded mapping features. Janet smiled politely. Those are all interesting ideas. We'll evaluate them as part of our strategic Clayton process. Elon understood corporate speak well enough to know what that meant. His vision of the future would be evaluated, discussed in meetings, and quietly shelved in favor of safer, more predictable projects. But $22 million would give him the freedom to build whatever he wanted next. The brothers asked for 24 hours to consider the offer. That evening, they sat in their old office space, the tiny room where it all began. They had kept the lease even after moving to larger offices, using it for storage and occasionally for private conversations. Remember when we had $28,000 and thought we were rich? Kimball said, looking around at the cardboard boxes and old computer equipment. I remember thinking we were going to fail. Elon replied. I remember being so scared I couldn't eat for 3 days. And now someone wants to pay us $300 million for what we built here. They sat in comfortable silence, both remembering the nights they had slept on this floor, the mornings they had shared single hamburgers for breakfast, the phone calls to their mother when they thought they might have to give up. What are you going to do with your money? Kimball asked finally. Start another company, Elon said without hesitation. What kind of company? Elon pulled out his notebook, the same one where he had been sketching impossible ideas for months. I want to create an online bank. something that makes financial services faster and easier for everyone. That sounds complicated. Everything worth doing is complicated. What else? Electric cars. The technology exists to build vehicles that run on batteries instead of gasoline. Someone just needs to make them affordable and practical. And after that, space travel. If we're going to survive as a species, we need to become multi-planetary. Someone needs to figure out how to get to Mars. Kimball stared at his brother. Most people who made $22 million would think about buying houses and taking vacations. Elon was already planning his next 3 companies. You're serious about Mars? Completely serious. Climate change, asteroid impacts, nuclear war. There are too many ways human civilization could end on Earth. We need a backup planet, and you think you're the person to make that happen? I think I'm one of the only people crazy enough to try. 2 days later, they accepted Compaq's offer. The signing ceremony took place in a conference room at Compaq's lawyer's office in downtown San Francisco. Elon wore his best suit, which still looked cheap compared to the corporate executives surrounding him. As he signed the papers that would make him a multi-millionaire, Elon felt an unexpected wave of sadness. Zip2 had been his first real company, his first proof that the impossible ideas in his head could become profitable businesses. Any regrets? Rich asked as they walked out of the building. Only that we're not taking it to the next level ourselves. Elon replied. What would the next level look like? Real-time traffic updates, turn-by-turn navigation, integration with mobile devices. Eventually autonomous vehicles that can navigate themselves using our mapping data. Rich laughed. Self-driving cars? Now you're really dreaming. Someone will build them eventually. Why not us? Because it would take 20 years and cost billions of dollars. So, Rich looked at Elon carefully. You know what? I think you might actually be the person to do something that crazy. That evening, Elon called his mother from his apartment. For the first time in 4 years, he had rented a place with real furniture and paid the full deposit up front. Mom, we sold the company. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you both. How much did you get? Enough to never worry about money again. What will you do now? Build something bigger. May was quiet for a moment. She knew her son well enough to understand that financial security wouldn't take him happy. He was driven by problems that needed solving, not bank accounts that needed filling. Just promise me one thing, she said. What's that? Don't forget to be human while you're trying to save humanity. The next morning, Elon woke up in his new apartment and realized something strange. For the first time since he was 24 years old, he didn't have to go to work. He had enough money to retire, to travel the world, to do whatever he wanted. The feeling lasted about 10 minutes. By noon, he was sitting at his computer, researching online banking regulations. By evening, he had outlined his next business plan. Within a week, he had rented office space and started recruiting programmers. Kimball found him there on a Saturday morning, already surrounded by whiteboards covered in code and business models. Couldn't stay retired, huh? Kimball said with a smile. Retirement is for people who finished their life's work, Elon replied. I haven't even started mine yet. What are you calling the new company? X.com. It's going to revolutionize online payments. And after that, Elon gestured to a wall covered in sketches of rockets, electric vehicles, and solar panels. After that, we changed the world. Kimball looked at his brother, 27 years old, worth $22 million, and still working 18-hour days, because he genuinely believed he could solve humanity's biggest problems. You know what? Kimball said. I think you actually might. As they worked side by side in their new office, neither brother fully understood what they had accomplished with Zip2. They had proven that 2 kids from South Africa could build a successful technology company from nothing. They had learned that impossible ideas could become profitable businesses. They had discovered that the biggest risk wasn't failure, it was success that made you comfortable. Most importantly, they had learned that finishing one impossible project just gave you the confidence to attempt the next one. Outside their windows, Silicon Valley hummed with the energy of 1,000 startups, each one trying to build the future. But inside their small office, 2 brothers who had once slept on floors and lived on instant noodles were quietly planning to make that future happen faster than anyone thought possible. The sale of Zip2 wasn't the end of their story, it was the beginning of everything that came next. Present day, the old Zip2 office in Palo Alto. The memories faded like smoke as Elon blinked back to the present. He was 52 again, standing in the same small office where he had once believed $22 million was all the money in the world. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago," Kimball said, watching his brother's face. "Do you remember what you said the night we decided to sell? That I was going to start another company?" Elon replied automatically. "No." "After that, you said you wanted to make sure human consciousness survived even if Earth didn't." Elon had forgotten those exact words, but the feeling behind them rushed back. Even at 27, he had understood that making money wasn't the point. The point was using that money to solve problems that mattered. "Sometimes I wonder if I bit off more than I could chew," Elon said quietly. Kimball raised an eyebrow. "You? The man who said getting to Mars was just an engineering problem. Mars still feels impossible some days. Tesla almost went bankrupt 3 times. SpaceX has blown up more rockets than I care to remember. Neuralink is years behind schedule. But they exist. All of them exist because you were too stubborn to believe they were impossible." Elon looked around the tiny office space. Through the window, he could see a Tesla charging station across the street. Above them, a SpaceX satellite was probably passing overhead, bringing internet to remote parts of the world. In research labs, Neuralink chips were helping paralyzed patients control computers with their thoughts. 24 years ago, all of those things had been sketches in a notebook. "The box," Elon said suddenly. "You never showed me what else was inside." Kimball smiled and returned to the cardboard box on the desk. One by one, he pulled out artifacts from their Zip 2 days. Photographs of their original team crowded around a single computer. Business cards printed on cheap paper. A coffee-stained contract with the San Jose Mercury News. "Look at this," Kimball said, holding up a faded piece of paper. "Our first business plan. The one we wrote before we had any idea what we were doing." Elon took the paper. His own handwriting from 1995 stared back at him. "Zip 2 Corporation, business plan goal. Help local newspapers transition to online publishing, long-term vision. Create the foundation for a fully connected world where information and services are accessible to everyone everywhere." Fully connected world, Elon read aloud. "I had no idea how connected it would actually become." "Keep reading. Look at page 3. Elon flipped pages and found a section titled Future Applications. Listed in his messy handwriting were ideas that had seemed like science fiction and real-time traffic and navigation systems, mobile internet access from handheld devices, electric vehicles with integrated mapping, autonomous transportation networks, space-based internet infrastructure. "I wrote this?" Elon asked, amazed. "You were 24 and already planning the next 30 years of your life." Elon stared at the list. Every item had either been built or was currently in development across his various companies. The kid who had slept on this office floor had somehow mapped out the exact path his adult self would follow. "There's one more thing," Kimball said, reaching deeper into the box. He pulled out a small leather journal, worn smooth from years of handling. Elon recognized it immediately. His personal notebook from the Zip 2 years, where he had written down every idea too crazy to share in business meetings. "I thought I lost this when we moved offices," Elon said, taking the journal carefully. "Mom found it wedged behind a filing cabinet. She's been saving it for the right moment." Elon opened to a random page. Dated December. "Had another argument with Rich about thinking too big. He says I need to focus on today's problems instead of tomorrow's opportunities. But what if thinking small is the biggest problem of all? What if the reason most companies fail isn't because they dream too big, but because they dream too small? I keep thinking about what happens after Zip 2. If we sell the company someday, what would I do with the money? Everyone else talks about buying houses and cars. I want to buy the future. Electric cars that don't pollute. Rockets that can take humans to other planets. Ways to connect human brains directly to computers. Solar panels that can power entire cities. Underground transportation tubes that move people faster than airplanes." People would think I'm crazy if I said these things out loud. Maybe I am crazy. But what if crazy is exactly what the world needs? Elon's hands were shaking slightly as he read his own words from 27 years ago. That young man sleeping on the office floor had somehow seen it all coming. "Do you know what the strangest part is?" Elon said to Kimball. "What?" "Reading this, I remember how impossible everything seemed back then. Electric cars were golf carts. Private space companies didn't exist. The internet barely worked on computers, let alone phones. And now I'm worried we're not moving fast enough. Climate change is accelerating. We need sustainable transport and energy yesterday, not tomorrow. Mars colonization can't wait another 50 years. Neural interfaces need to help people now, not in some distant future. Kimball studied his brother's face. You know what I think? What? I think the 24-year-old kid who wrote these plans would be proud of the 52-year-old man who made them happen. Elon felt an unexpected tightness in his throat. Success had brought so many responsibilities, so many people depending on him, so much pressure to keep achieving impossible things. Sometimes he forgot to feel proud of what had already been accomplished. There's something I need to tell you, Kimball said, his voice becoming serious. About why I really asked you to come here today. I wondered about that. You could have shown me this box anywhere. I wanted you to remember this place. This feeling, the two of us against the world, convinced we could build something important. Why? Kimball paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I think it's time we did it again. Did what again? Started a company together. Like real partners, not just brothers who support each other's separate projects. Elon felt his pulse quicken. What kind of company? Remember how Zip2 was about connecting people to local businesses? What if we created something that connects people to local sustainable food systems? Urban farms, community gardens, local producers, but with the same technological sophistication you bring to cars and rockets. The idea hit Elon like electricity. Food security was one of the biggest challenges facing humanity. Climate change was disrupting agriculture worldwide. Urban populations were growing faster than food systems could adapt. Sustainable food networks, Elon said slowly, with AI-optimized distribution, automated growing systems, maybe even cellular agriculture integration. Exactly. And this time, Kimball grinned, we could start with actual furniture instead of cardboard boxes. Where's the adventure in that? Elon laughed. For the first time in months, maybe years, Elon felt the same excitement he had experienced in his tiny office as a 24-year-old. The thrill of seeing a problem that needed solving and knowing exactly how to solve it. Would we have to sleep on the floor again? Elon asked. Only if you insist on working 18-hour days. I always insist on working 18-hour days. Then yes, probably some floor sleeping. They both laughed. Outside, the sun was setting over Palo Alto, casting long shadows across the parking lot where they had once worried about affording gas for their beat-up cars. There's just one condition, Elon said. What's that? We don't sell this one. Ever. We build it to last forever. Kimball smiled. Deal. As they prepared to leave the office where it all began, both brothers understood something that their younger selves couldn't have grasped. Their first startup hadn't just been about building a business. It had been about building themselves, their confidence, their partnership, their unshakable belief that impossible things were just engineering problems waiting to be solved. Now they were ready to do it all again. Present day, still in the old Zip2 office, as Elon carefully placed his old journal back in the box, his fingers brushed against something else at the bottom. A sealed envelope, yellowed with age, with familiar handwriting across the front. What's this? He asked, pulling it out. Kimball's expression grew serious. That's why I really brought you here today. The envelope was addressed in their mother's distinctive script. For my boys. Open only if you both make it. When did she write this? Elon asked, turning the envelope over in his hands. Look at the date. In small numbers in the corner, barely visible, was written July 20. Elon's breath caught. July 20, 1995. 5 days after they had moved into this office. 5 days after they had started Zip2 with $28,000 and no idea what they were doing. She wrote this when we were sleeping on the floor, Elon said quietly. When we were living on hot dogs and instant noodles. When everyone thought we were going to fail. How did you find it? It was taped to the inside bottom of the box. I almost missed it completely. Elon held the envelope like it contained something precious and fragile. Which, he realized, it probably did. What do you think it says? Only one way to find out. With trembling fingers, Elon carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in their mother's neat handwriting. As he unfolded it, Both brothers leaned in to read together. My dearest Elon and Kimball, if you're reading this letter, it means you've succeeded beyond what you thought possible when you started this journey. I'm writing this on your 5th day in that tiny office, watching you both pretend you're not terrified. I want you to know something I've never told you. I wasn't worried about your business failing. I was terrified that it would succeed. Not because success is bad, but because I've seen what success does to people. It makes them forget who they were when they had nothing. It makes them forget why they started. It makes them think they're invincible when they're actually just lucky. Elon, I've watched you work 100-hour weeks not because you love money, but because you genuinely believe you can make the world better. Never lose that idealism, even when people tell you to be more realistic. Realistic people don't change the world. Dreamers who refuse to stop dreaming do. Kimball, I've seen you take care of your brother when he forgets to eat, when he pushes himself too hard. Never stop being his anchor to humanity, even when his dreams seem impossible. The best leaders aren't the ones with the biggest visions. They're the ones who help others achieve their visions. Success will bring you many things: money, recognition, opportunities. But it will also bring isolation, responsibility, and the weight of other people's expectations. Remember this moment, when you had nothing but each other and a shared belief that you could build something meaningful. The greatest danger of success isn't failure. It's forgetting who you were when you had nothing to lose. I'm proud of you both, not for what you'll accomplish, but for why you're trying to accomplish it. The world needs more people who believe impossible things are just problems waiting to be solved. When you read this letter, you'll probably be older, hopefully wiser, and definitely richer than you are today. But I hope you'll still be the same two boys who slept on an office floor because they believed they could change the world. Take care of each other. The partnership between brothers is the most important business relationship you'll ever have. All my love, Mom. P.S. Elon, please remember to eat regular meals. Kimball, please make sure he does. Both brothers were quiet for a long time after finishing the letter. Outside, the sounds of modern Palo Alto continued. Tesla cars humming past, tech workers heading home, the constant buzz of Silicon Valley innovation. But inside this small office, time seemed suspended between past and future. She knew, Elon said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Knew what? That success would be harder than failure. That having everything would be more complicated than having nothing. Kimball nodded slowly. Do you remember what it felt like? When we had $28,000 and thought we might lose it all? Everything was simple then. Sleep in the office, work on the code, find customers, survive another day. That was it. And now, Elon looked out the window at the world they had helped create. Electric cars were becoming mainstream. Private space companies were routine. The internet connected everyone to everything, just like they had dreamed. But he also thought about the weight he carried now. Tesla's stock price affected pension funds and retirement accounts. SpaceX failures could set back human space exploration by years. Every decision rippled outward, affecting thousands of employees and millions of customers. Now I wake up every morning knowing that if I make the wrong choice, it could hurt a lot of people. Elon said, "Is that why you work so hard? Because you're afraid of making mistakes?" I work hard because there's so much that needs fixing. Climate change, space exploration, neural interfaces, sustainable energy, traffic congestion. Every day we don't solve these problems is a day humanity falls further behind. Kimball studied his brother's face. But what if Mom was right? What if the reason you can solve big problems is because you still think like that 24-year-old kid who slept on this floor? What do you mean? That kid didn't worry about stock prices or board meetings or what the media would say if he failed. He just saw problems and figured out how to fix them. Elon picked up his old journal again, flipping through pages of sketches and ideas that had seemed impossible in 1995. Electric cars, reusable rockets, brain-computer interfaces, solar roof tiles, underground transportation tunnels. You know what the strangest part is? Elon said. What? Reading this journal, I realized that kid wasn't just dreaming about technology. He was dreaming about saving humanity. Every idea was about making sure people could survive and thrive, no matter what happened to Earth. And that's exactly what you've spent your life doing. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like an adventure and started feeling like a responsibility. Kimball carefully folded their mother's letter and placed it back in the envelope. Maybe that's the real reason I wanted you to come here today. Not just to remember where we started, but to remember why we started. To change the world. To save the world. There's a difference. Elon looked around the tiny office one more time. In a few hours, he would drive back to his life of board meetings and engineering reviews and impossible deadlines. But for this moment, he was 24 again, full of crazy ideas and absolute certainty that those ideas could become reality. The new company, Elon said suddenly. The Food Systems Project. What would we call it? Kimball smiled. I was thinking, Zip 3? Like Zip 2, but for the next generation. Instead of connecting people to local businesses, we connect people to local food sources, urban farms, community gardens, sustainable producers. With AI optimization for nutrition and resource efficiency, Elon added. His mind already racing ahead. Automated growing systems. Maybe even cellular agriculture integration. And this time, we do it right from the beginning. Proper funding, experienced team, professional infrastructure, but still sleeping in the office when necessary.
Obviously, some traditions are sacred.
As they gathered up the contents of the box, preparing to leave the place where it all began, both brothers understood something their younger selves couldn't have grasped. Their first startup hadn't just been about building a business, it had been about building themselves. Their confidence, their partnership, and their unshakable belief that the impossible was just another engineering problem. Now they were older, richer, and hopefully wiser. But they were still the same two brothers, who had once shared a single hamburger and dreamed about changing the world. The difference was, now they knew it was possible. Because they had already done it once. Present day. Walking to their cars in the parking lot. The evening air was cool as Elon and Kimball stepped out of the building that had changed their lives. The cardboard box tucked under Kimball's arm contained more than old papers and photographs. It held the DNA of everything they had become. Wait, Elon said, stopping halfway across the parking lot. There's something else in that box, isn't there? Kimball set the box down on the hood of his electric truck. You always were too smart for your own good. He reached into the box one final time and pulled out a folded piece of paper that looked newer than everything else. Not yellowed with age like their mother's letter, but crisp and white. What is it? Elon asked. A business plan. One we wrote together in 1996 for our someday companies. I found it last month when Mom was moving to her new apartment. Elon took the paper and unfolded it. At the top, in both their handwritings were the words Future Projects, after Zip 2. The list made Elon's heart skip. 1. Electric vehicles that can compete with gas cars. Elon. 2. Commercial space travel and Mars colonies. Elon. 3. High-speed ground transportation tunnels. Elon. 4. Brain-computer interfaces for medical use. Elon. 5. Sustainable farming and food distribution networks. Kimball. Solar energy systems for homes and businesses. Both 7. Online banking and digital payments. Elon. Below the list in Elon's messy handwriting. Timeline. All of these by 2025. Goal. Make humanity sustainable and multi-planetary. Elon stared at the paper in amazement. We actually did it. Every single thing on this list. Not all of it, Kimball corrected. We haven't gotten to Mars yet, and my food networks are still small compared to your companies. But we did it. 2 kids with no money and crazy dreams. We actually built all of this. Kimball looked at his brother carefully. Is that what you think our real achievement is? The companies we built? What do you mean? I mean, look around. Kimball gestured to the world beyond the parking lot. Tesla didn't just build electric cars. It forced the entire auto industry to go electric. SpaceX didn't just build rockets. It made space exploration exciting again. Zip 2 didn't just help newspapers. It showed the world how the internet could connect people to local services. Elon followed his brother's gaze. Across the street, a row of Tesla superchargers hummed quietly as cars recharged. Above them, contrails from commercial flights shared the sky with satellites that SpaceX had launched. In nearby buildings, thousands of people worked for companies that existed because Zip 2 had proven internet businesses could succeed. You changed how people think about what's possible, Kimball continued. That's the real legacy. We changed how people think, Elon corrected. This was never a solo project. For the first time in years, Elon felt the weight of his achievements not as a burden, but as proof of something important. Every impossible project that had become real. Every time someone had said it couldn't be done, and they had done it anyway. Remember what you used to say when we were starting Zip2? Kimball asked. If it's not impossible, someone else would have already done it. Did I really say that? All the time. Usually right before you'd work for 36 hours straight to prove an impossible thing was possible. Elon laughed. No wonder I was always exhausted. You're still always exhausted. But now you're exhausted while changing the world instead of just dreaming about changing the world. They reached their cars, Elon's latest Tesla model and Kimball's electric pickup from one of his sustainable agriculture partners. Both vehicles would have seemed like science fiction to their younger selves sleeping on office floors in the new company, Elon said suddenly. Zip3, are you serious about doing it together? Dead serious. But this time, we do it as equals. Real partners. What would that look like? Kimball leaned against his truck. I handle the agriculture and distribution networks. You handle the technology and automation. We both handle the vision and strategy. AI-optimized growing systems, Elon said, his mind already racing. Vertical farms in urban areas, blockchain-based supply chain tracking, maybe even cellular agriculture for protein production. See? You're already thinking 3 steps ahead. Someone has to think ahead. Climate change isn't waiting for us to figure this out slowly. But this time, Kimball said firmly, we don't kill ourselves doing it. Real office hours. Actual weekends. Time for families and friends and life outside of work. Elon looked skeptical. I don't think I know how to work normal hours. Then I'll teach you. That's what brothers are for. As they stood in the parking lot where they had once worried about affording gas for their beat-up cars, both men understood something that would have surprised their younger selves. Success wasn't measured by the size of your bank account or the number of companies you started. Success was measured by whether you remembered why you started building things in the first place. There's one more thing I want to show you, Kimball said, pulling out his phone. I've been working on this for months. He opened a presentation titled Zip3 Sustainable Food Networks for Urban Populations. The first slide showed a map of major cities around the world, with red dots indicating food desert areas where people had limited access to fresh, healthy food. This is the problem, Kimball said. 2 billion people live in areas without reliable access to nutritious food. Climate change is making it worse every year. The next slide showed a network of connected green dots, urban farms, community gardens, and local food producers linked by intelligent distribution systems. And this is the solution. What if we could connect every food producer to every food consumer using the same kind of mapping and optimization technology we developed for Zip2? Elon studied the presentation with growing excitement. Real-time demand prediction, automated nutrient optimization, integration with vertical farming systems. This could actually work. It's not just technology, Kimball continued. It's about rebuilding the connection between people and their food sources. The same way Zip2 connected people to local businesses. How long have you been planning this? Since the day you told me you wanted to get humanity to Mars. I realized that if we're going to be multiplanetary, we need to figure out how to feed people sustainably on any planet. Elon felt a familiar thrill of excitement. The same feeling he'd had in this parking lot 28 years ago when they decided to start Zip2 with no money and no experience. When do we start? He asked. We already started. The day we decided to come back here and remember who we used to be. As the sun set over Palo Alto, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, 2 brothers who had once shared a single hamburger because it was all they could afford, made plans to tackle their next impossible project. You know what the best part is? Elon said as they prepared to drive away. What? This time, we know it's possible. Because impossible is just another word for something nobody has figured out yet. And we're pretty good at figuring things out. We're the best at figuring things out. They shook hands in the parking lot, sealing a partnership that had begun 28 years ago when they were 2 scared kids with a crazy dream. Now they were 2 successful men with an even crazier dream. The difference was, now they had the experience, resources, and confidence to make any dream come true. As they drove away in opposite directions, both heading home to families and lives that their younger selves could never have imagined, Each brother carried the same thought. The kid who had slept on that office floor hadn't just built companies. He had built the future, one impossible project at a time. And they weren't finished building yet. We'd love to know, where are you listening from today? Drop your location in the comments below. Are you tuning in from New York? Tokyo? Maybe you're in Palo Alto near that very office where the Musk brothers started their first company. If this story inspired you, please hit that like button. It really helps us reach more people with these amazing true stories. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for many more interesting videos just like this one. We share incredible stories of entrepreneurs, inventors, and dreamers who changed the world by refusing to accept that anything was impossible. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. Stories like these spread kindness and awareness about what's possible when you combine big dreams with hard work. You never know who might need to hear that their crazy idea could be the next world-changing company. Thank you for listening, and remember, the next time someone tells you something is impossible, just think of two brothers who once shared hamburgers because it was all they could afford, and went on to revolutionize transportation, space travel, and the internet itself. Keep dreaming big, and we'll see you in the next video.